Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the Dodgy Kit Show. I'm Dodgy Kit. Hello, wherever you are. Good morning, America, and good morning, UK, and good evening, the rest of the world, I suppose. Good afternoon if you're over there in a bit of, I don't know, you might be in Greece or something. It's probably afternoon, isn't it? Might be at the end of the swimming pool. They're having a bit of a scrap. Yeah, yeah. How you doing, everybody? Yeah, welcome back to the show. This is Dodgy Git Show. What we at? 78 now. Dodgy Git Show 78. I thought I'd come back with you today because we've got this Covid-19 inquiry, and we covered a bit of it yesterday, and I'd like to cover a bit of it today. So if my software is going to keep up with me, which it probably doesn't look like it's going to, I'm going to shift us over and have a little listen in. And I'm going to poke my gob in here and there where I fancy a little jibe, eh? Yeah, I'm going to voice my opinion. Yeah, I found my space to air my views. Yeah, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to listen to these people, see what they got to say. I've already listened to this lady so far a little bit. They're going to introduce us, so I'll just bring her in. Yeah, she's there in the COVID inquiry, and she's been questioned a bit so far, and what she's come up with is quite true so far. I think the lack of government systems are just not there is needing to be highlighted and brought to the public's attention for review and proactive amendment and change, yeah, for continuous improvement. So I'm going to flip us over, get us some screens up here, and there's this lovely lady here. She's in the court there, so, or is it a court? I think it's a court. And I'll bring her up, and I'll probably shunt myself around, or I might disappear here and there. But I'm purely doing this so we've got our own space away from this restricted system of refusal of feedback when they they disabled the chat and they disabled the comments. You can't put what you want to say, and that feedback is vitally important and might raise some really important questions that can be used. And for us as society to be denied that privilege of proactive feedback for continuous improvement is a concern, because it should be part of the system, which is exactly why we're in the situation we are, and this lady finds herself having to deal with government or ways of doing things that aren't there. So we'll tune in. Thanks for joining me. I'm Dodgy Git, and this is the Dodgy Git Show.
That too?
Yes. As in, did I witness that?
Yes.
Yes.
Drawing this together, at paragraph 39, at the bottom of this page and going over to the next, you make the point that science was really only one part of the decisions, that sort of suite of decisions that was going to need to be made. If we can just skip to the next page and the end of that paragraph, you say the questions about how to respond to COVID were, in my mind, huge political, ethical, moral, social and economic questions that went to the heart of the kind of country we were or wanted to be, alongside a whole set of relentlessly practical operational issues, like the supply of food and medical equipment. There were the hard choices, and they should be made by elected ministers.
What this lady's complaining about is, or she's highlighted so far, is that when she's gone to do something or been asked to do a job by the government, she thought she was going to go and be furnished with a system of doing stuff. Yeah, we do this, and then the results of that go through to here, and we do this, and then we do this. And she's on about navigating. Yeah, yeah. So you're navigating through these different. What she found was that they didn't exist. She's saying, well, how do I deal with this? And they're like, oh, well, I don't know. I'll fucking make it up. She's like, well, this is supposed to be there, a pre-thought out thing. So we'll listen in again. Thanks for joining me, everyone.
INQ 285980. It's the top of that page. You're emailing Mark Sweeney in early March, and the second paragraph, there's a conversation about something else, and then you say, BTW, by the way, apart from my mini rant about the masculine tone, I have some views about the way we are treating science like it's the word of God. We don't always go where the science leads us. Chris Whitty is exceptional, by the way, so this is not a pop at him, but the answer isn't just what is rational. And there's another email, which I won't bring up, at about the same time, where you make a similar point that this idea of following the sciences is giving too much weight to science.
So this is Helen McManaman.
Does this reflect the type of...
By the looks of that email.
It does. It does. And Mr. O'Connor, would you mind if I made a similar point? I don't know whether later in where my evidence we're going to get to talking about the Grenfell fire, but I can see that that's on the screen.
No, do.
And I just want to... You may see through my evidence that I am referring back to the learning I had from having been the Director General for Housing and Planning at the time of the fire. I just am always conscious that it's not just a policy experience. It was a tragedy that happened in our city, and 72 people lost their lives and a lot of other people's lives.
This lady here, she has had experience, and it was in the forefront of her mind. She was aware of what she was doing, when she was doing it, and how she was doing it, and she's concerned, wasn't she?
Last thing I want to ask you about this, though, is that what we see here is you talking to Mark Sweeney, who was another senior civil servant in the Cabinet Office, about following the science. Is this something you took up with Boris Johnson or elected politicians, expressing the type of views you've described today and which you seem to have been emailing Mark Sweeney about?
I don't remember raising it with Mr. Johnson, but I did see him regularly and felt very comfortable with being able to say what I thought to him and ask him questions. So it's perfectly possible that I would have said, what does this even mean? What is the science or something? I can't remember a specific instance, but it would be very surprising to me to have felt so clearly about something for a number of weeks and not to have said it to him. I would have done.
Yeah. Let's move on in the chronology, Ms. McNamara. I want to ask you about that period in the middle of March. We've certainly heard a lot of evidence yesterday about that time when the strategy changed. As you subsequently discovered, you were in fact coming down with COVID yourself, weren't you?
Yes.
On Friday the 13th and Saturday the 14th of March. And I think it's right that, was it the Saturday that was your last day in the Cabinet Office? And you dialed in to some meetings on the Sunday. And
So
then
I worked from home all day Sunday,
Yeah.
but decided not to go to the office because I was worried that I might have the virus by then.
Yeah, so we'll bear that in mind. But with that in mind, let's look at page 32.
So she didn't do what Dominic Cummings did, which was take his wife and child to an optical appointment or something, dentist. I think it was an optician's appointment.
Of that
She locked herself in the house and didn't go to work
on Friday.
because she thought she might. She wasn't sure, but she thought she might, so she was cautious.
You walk in. I mean, as we'll come to see, perhaps we should have touched on this earlier. We've heard about Downing Street and the Cabinet Office being, as it were, places very close to each other, but with separate organisations. You were based in the Cabinet Office, were you not? But spent much of your time in Downing Street.
Yes.
And
The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing.
walking from the Cabinet Office into Downing Street. And
The left hand uses a different computer program to the right hand, and I didn't have a login for that one, and then when I went there they wouldn't give me one for that one, so then I was lost in both. Funny, isn't it?
just seen, who was in charge of coordinating with the Department for Health, he said, that's Mr. Sweeney had said, but you're reporting it, I've been told for years there's a whole plan for this. There is no plan. We're in huge trouble.
Yeah, see, there is no plan. We're in huge trouble. Nothing has been done, yeah, since what? We started inventing rockets.
Heading for a disaster. I think we're going to kill thousands of people. As soon as I've been told this, I've come through to see you. It seems from the conversation you're having that that is correct. Give or take a few words, is it right that that's an accurate account?
Yes.
It's very...
Said we're absolutely fucked.
No doubt you can still remember that moment of realisation.
Yes, it was horrible. So I think you heard from Mr. Cummings yesterday. I think that, in effect, on either side of the link door, which is the door between Downing Street and the Cabinet Office, and my office was just above it, that we'd been sort of going through the same process, I think, in those previous 2 weeks, in the sense that there's just increasing concern that actually we were really radically in the wrong place. And my experience that Friday, where I had started with the morning meeting in Downing Street, I think, and then I'd done another briefing with the opposition, where their concerns, all the opposition parties, and their concerns were entirely valid, and their anxieties were so clear and high. And I felt, listening to what the government side and my side of the table was saying, I was more alarmed rather than reassured at the end of that meeting. And so I'd spent most of the day that Friday, on top of all of the other things that we'd been doing the previous week, really trying to gauge how much of a problem I thought we had. And
the great realisation.
Like, I hope nobody sitting in that office ever has that again, actually.
My heart fell out of my ass when I realised the government knew fuck all.
It wasn't in any doubt in my mind at that point that we were heading for a total disaster, and what we had to...
Boris had his head up his ass.
Impact as little as...
Mad had his head where? Where? He was doing what with prawns?
From that moment on, what were we going to collectively do?
And
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, they didn't have a clue. La 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 la.
It's in the action plan. It's contain, delay, mitigate, squashing the sombrero.
Chat crap, worry like fuck, eat the fucking... eat the, what was it, the thing of the dip. Oh, fucked up.
We're suddenly realising the complete lack of any supporting planning to make that policy work. Is that right?
It's more that the scale of what was going to have to happen, I think, was just so outside of what anybody had thought might be necessary.
An unprepared generation of fuckwits. What do you reckon? Welcome to the Dodgy Good Show.
That the fact that we would have to effectively ask everybody in the country to...
Bend over. No lube.
The things, if you work in government, you can just start to imagine...
Make it up.
...that will be for what are you going to do about the prison service? What are you going to do about all of the other bits of...
Can theologise about it for a while, can't we, over a beer down the pub? Should we have another chaser?
All of the questions that we would need to be...
And chaser, is it? Been chasing each other's lines around.
And so we'd be trying to deal with these two things. We've got a...
Chaos and no clue.
If you go back to what it felt like at that time in March...
A circus.
Inconceivable that you would, in fact, do what we then went on to do. And
completely.
I've heard a little bit about, should we have locked down earlier? We could not have gone any faster in a safe way, I don't believe, from that day. Now, could all sorts of...
Is she super paranoid?
Pretty sure, yes, of course. But the scale of the undertaking was absolutely enormous, and I think it's...
Do you reckon there's any HRT treatment going on with this one here? Just in case, where we're at with time of life and that, decision making, rationality, risk management, yeah, error management, yeah, holding secrets.
On this day was there was going to be a need to lock down, and how was that going to happen?
That's the thing, they didn't have a clue.
Was that there wasn't going to be a lockdown. There was going to be squashing the sombrero. And what we've heard from Mr. Cummings and others...
Playing whack-a-fucking-mole more like, mate, fucking squashing the sombrero. He's the one wearing the sombrero and he's got all the flipping dribbly sauce down himself, no? Start leaking out, it's been his head too fucking long.
Because the NHS would be overwhelmed.
And he's very good with the questioning, isn't he? You reckon? You got all this whole team of people come up with a load of stuff behind him. Yeah? That chap there. Yeah? Do you reckon he's watching on his phone? Go and get a bacon roll, mate, and a coffee, eh?
Whether it was more, as you've said, to do with the scale of the planning that was going to be needed.
I think that is a fair distinction, actually, and definitely the conversation.
See, this is the thing. They're just talking it over, and they go, "Well, yeah, that is actually, yeah, that was fucked up. Yeah, that didn't work. Yeah, that did it." And then at the end of it, they go, "Oh, all right, that was really productive, wasn't it?" And they go, "Well, nothing was produced. All you produced a load of fucking answers for stuff, but you did fuck all with it to produce the next thing, the next systematic change, yeah, to make sure that it's continuingly worthy, yeah." It's no embracing it because it's proactively cut off, yeah. You even try, I don't know, try phoning your doctor without some kind of convolution. Try phoning your local hospital to see if somebody's there. Go on, see that. See how long that takes. See how fucked up and convoluted it is and how many people you have to go through to fucking get there. Yeah? Do a fairly simple thing with a government system about questioning something, and nobody's willing to answer it. They don't want to know.
Civil servant, so...
Anyway, here we are.
Probably where my...
Dodgy Git Show 78. We're live. This is live, right? Coming from the Covid-19 inquiry. Yeah? Yeah, so thanks for joining me, everybody. Get yourself a cup of cha. I'm going to just disappear my picture, get my ugly mug out of the way for a minute, and let the lady talk and go make myself a cup of cha, and then I'll be back with you, yeah? That might take me a second, but I'll get there. All right.
Then took place over that weekend, and we'll have other witnesses who can help us with those, so I'm not going to take you through them in detail, but I do want to ask you just about one of the meetings, which you describe at paragraph 65 of your witness statement, so it's on page 35. And I think it would have been on the Saturday, where you say that, I think it was in preparation for a larger meeting involving more senior decision makers, there was what you describe as a scratchy meeting with the DHSC and others that Mark Sweeney chaired, where, your words, you say it was clear that the DHSC view was to wait until the latest possible moment to tell people they had to stay at home. So what are you trying to convey by that word scratchy and the content of that meeting?
So I think when we were, and you're right, there were lots and lots of meeting notes and papers and details of all of the meetings that happened on that Saturday. When we were trying to find the note of this meeting, I think we worked out that it was actually on the Sunday. So it was the Sunday meeting of for the Prime Minister, and this was the prep meeting before then to make sure, it's a classic bit of civil servicing, to make sure that the civil servants all understand what the other civil servants are going to say, and that you've got some sort of coordination, so you're using the ministerial time most effectively. The reason I remember this as scratchy is because at this point it felt like we really were in slightly different places in terms of a group of us in the centre who had got much further on how bad this must be quite quickly, and a perfectly reasonable, I should say, concern from DHSC, who knew as well, if not better, than we did, that the planning wasn't there to support this, that there needed to be more time to get some of this planning actually done. So it's a bit of the scratchiness was precisely that. Yep. At this point, I think we were in an unbelievably urgent hurry to get to where we needed to be as fast as possible.
And one of the points that Mr. Cummings made in his evidence yesterday is that we shouldn't assume that there was some sort of transition from the containment plan to the suppression plan that everyone agreed with, and that it was seamless. In fact, over this weekend, people were disagreeing. There was uncertainty. It was by no means a smooth transition from Plan A to Plan B, and it sounds like you agree with that.
I do agree with that, and it's because.
So that week they were all in chaos by the sounds of it, and they were all in-house discussion, and nobody was concerned about due diligence because everything was questionable, right?
Might well have understood better the consequences for the health operation. It's not. I wouldn't want to give the impression that they didn't have some valid points that they were making. I just think we'd moved into a different way of thinking about what might happen.
Yeah. And just lastly on this then, a couple of fairly high-level questions. Mr. Kane yesterday gave evidence that although, to be clear, no decision to lock down was made over that weekend, and I think that's a commonly agreed evidence, his impression was that over that weekend it became the collective view, no doubt Mr. Cummings' point that not smoothly, but still it became the collective view that there would need to be a lockdown. Do you agree with that?
That's certainly how I saw it, yes.
As we've heard, you dropped out of the picture because you became unwell. But of course we know that the lockdown was announced about 10 days later on the Monday of the week after. Were you expecting the lockdown to happen earlier than that? I mean, you've given us a clue to your answer already in terms of how much needed to be done. But your own view, had you expected it to happen earlier or not?
I don't know is the honest answer. I thought it would happen as soon as it was possible to do it, because given there were some really big questions to ask and answer, I think.
And we've heard that a lot went on the following week involving Mr. Johnson and others, but you were not involved in any of that because you, in fact, your whole family got COVID.
Yep.
You were off work from that Monday for, I think, the best part of 3 weeks.
Yes, I don't think, the other thing I should say, and this might help you with the evidence in the emails and the records, I'm not sure we referred to it as lockdown at that point. I don't think we were talking about there being a lockdown. I think we were talking about people having to stay at home from memory.
Moving on then, looking ahead, you came back to work on April the 2nd, which, as I say, I think was about 2.5 weeks or so that you were off. Mm-hmm. And then, as we've heard, you were in post until February of 2021 when you left the Cabinet Office. During that time then, the Prime Minister was very unwell and there were issues for you to deal with in that regard. Your boss, Mark Sedwill, resigned and was replaced by Simon Case. Mm-hmm. You had serious concerns about working conditions at the Cabinet Office, and there were steps you took to try and address that problem. And there was an involvement on your part in a number of other COVID-related matters. So would it be fair to say it was a very busy, very demanding time for you following your return to work?
Yes, undoubtedly.
And if we can look, please, at paragraph 73 of your witness statement, so it's page 40.
That's human factors things. If you're returning to work, when you've returned to work, it takes you a week to get your head back in what you're doing, at least, doesn't it? It depends how long you've had off. If she's pregnant or whatever, I don't know what happened there. I haven't been listening. I've been doing something else. If you've been pregnant or something, off for a year, trying to get back into work, it'd be a real struggle, right? You do need to take that into account. Managers don't. They just get angry and get pissed off or something.
What in fact happened, you say, was that a relatively junior member of the staff at Number 10 came to you with a concern about what was going to happen at prisons, and in particular, whether prisoners who were in unsafe conditions in prisons should be released or not. And without reading out the paragraphs, the essence of it is that you were surprised and concerned that a decision hadn't been taken at departmental level, and there seemed to be a certain amount of failure to take a decision that needed to be taken. Is that right?
Yes, I was worried, well, as I said in the statement, worried that the decision should probably have been taken in the department, and then if that wasn't going to be the case, it should have been taken in the Cabinet Committee structures that had been set up. So the notion this decision was still hanging and was dependent on the Prime Minister personally taking a view was a cause for concern for me.
And that it had needed to be raised with you by a junior member of staff. That's not the way the government should have been running.
No, and I should say, although she was, technically in civil service terms, junior, rather brilliant, and the private secretary responsible for Home Affairs, so she was effectively doing her job. But the fact that it was a private secretary in Number 10 who was having to force such a big question is not how government should operate. No.
They weren't embracing the proactive feedback. Yeah, they're in denial. They don't want to hear it. See.
Yeah.
But then let's just look.
People called junior. In junior, she was junior in one place, but in the other place, she was fucking running the gaff, right?
That caused substantial issues in managing the response were visible in this moment. First of all, the sucking into Number 10 of too much of the decision-making by the political machine, and this compounding a narrowed perspective. Secondly, a general lack of knowledge or understanding of how large parts of the state operate. Thirdly, an over-ideological, in your view, approach to individual decisions, an absence of the accountable people in departments being involved or sufficiently involving themselves in decision-making, cabinet government not serving its usual purpose, unreasonable pressure on the Number 10 private office, and finally, an absence of humanity. We will go to most, if not all, of those themes in the questions I'm going to ask you after a break that we may have shortly. But I wanted just to pick up on that very last consideration. You say an absence of humanity. It's a broad term. It's a powerful term. What did you mean by it?
I'm sure, as you say, we'll talk more about this in general, but I think in this particular example, it was the fact that there would be individual prison officers at risk, the public servants who were just, coming to work and doing their job, that individual prisoners who had already, in effect, been punished for the crime that they had committed by being in prison, the lack of care or comprehension that they then needed also to be looked after. There was a responsibility to look after those people. And then also that there was a responsibility to look after the families of the people for whom the prisoners might be returning back to. And it just felt very, very cold, actually, in terms of the decision making. But all of those broader points are true as well.
I think it's just up against stone wall, isn't it? When she says it's cold, you imagine stood at the bottom of a massive great castle wall, yeah? It's normally damp and cold, isn't it? Same situation when you're up against bullshit, especially when it's piled high. Oh, it looks like we're going for a break. We're going to go for a little break. Look, they'll be back in a minute. She's gone for a whittle. Yeah, I'll just move myself around. Let's have a little shuffle about. Hang on, I got to draw some pictures with stuff. Look, hang on. Thanks very much for everybody joining me. She's popped off there by the looks of things. Popped off for a minute. Thanks for joining me. I'm Dodgy Git. This is a Dodgy Git show 78. We're covering the COVID-19 inquiry here in the UK. Yeah, this is how we do things here. This is why the UK has got some sort of respect around the world to a degree. Yeah, people slag the place off. Yeah, and when they get here, they go, "Oh, everybody's fagging wankers." No, you're all. Everybody owes us something because fucking some kind of history went on, and then you're like, "Yeah, bollocks, mate. Shut up and get on with it." And don't forget a fucking bag of chips while you're at it. People just when they get here, they start to scream and shout. And we can talk about it, and that's the thing. People do talk about it. Talk about all kinds of things, all kinds of religious stuff, philosophical fucking debate and talking and fucking all kinds of shit. You know, we argue and bitch and whinge and moan and fucking have scraps. Yeah, people fucking, blimey, out in the cities, isn't it? Everybody's fucking jugging each other up with fucking blades, isn't it? It's a bit sad. It is sad when you're not able to, converse, or you don't possess the fucking words in your vocabulary to be able to express what you're actually feeling. Half the time, it's literally like, "Fuck it, what's up, mate? Why the fuck are you so stressed out? Why are you so pissed off? What's upset you? Why do you need to nick that? Why do you need to smash that up? Why do you need to talk to somebody like that?" It goes back to it, actually. They probably just need to go to town with 50 quid and fucking buy some shit. Because they haven't bought anything for fucking ages because they've been skint. Yeah? Or they've fucking got pressures about being skint. Yeah? They got fucking bills hanging out their ringhole for some flat they fucking don't particularly enjoy living in. Yeah? Got no food in the fridge, no electricity on the key or whatever. Yeah? Lots of people struggling out there. Yeah? But this country does review stuff when it requires it, and this COVID thing does require it. Yeah, I'm certainly glad they're doing this inquiry. I'm glad they're doing it and allowing people to speak freely. And in fact, this sort of format and way of doing stuff, I think, should be more of an even playing field than some of the court systems that allow solicitors to strategically attack one person or the other, to manipulate them into saying something that fucks them over, and then they just weigh in on that, and fucking that's it. It's done, isn't it? Yeah, you're like, well, hang on a minute. What exactly did you fucking mean anyway? And you've based all of it on that? Or hang on a sec, what did you exactly say anyway? I might have misinterpreted your question for a start. Yeah? I had been sat there all day, had nothing to fucking eat or drink. I wasn't allowed to smoke fucking, at the time. Yeah, fucking held out until fucking 4:45, innit? Another strategies. Yeah, anyway, let's go and have a little, what have they done then? See, they've gone for tea break. Is that what they've done? Yeah, because here, look, it says on my thing here, from 10 o'clock. Right, I'll bring it up for you. Please note, timings are provisional and subject to change. I may as well bring the thing up because it came up on the screen anyway, didn't it? And I'm like, I don't know how the politics of fucking YouTube works. Yeah. So yeah, we got here Helen McNamara, right? Helen McNamara, former Deputy Cabinet Secretary, right? She was the Deputy Cabinet Secretary. So there's a Cabinet Secretary, and she's the deputy to that, right? And that's till 1 o'clock. But the judge probably needed a whittle. So she's gone off, because it only started at 10, so they've only been in there an hour. So they'll go and have a whittle and a coffee and a fag out the back door, wouldn't they, quick? This is well funny as well. When they're all doing that, they're all on either side, yeah? And then when they all go out for a fag, and they'll all go and stand under the same shelter. It's well funny. Anyway, it's quite good they put it on here, and I'm, is able to talk about it and use it as a fucking educational thing. And then after, at 2 o'clock till fucking 4:30, we got Dr. David Halpern, President and former Chief Executive Officer of the Behavioural Insights Team. Behavioural Insight. And there was a team formed, Behavioural Insight, and he was the President and former Chief Executive. So hang on. There was a team. He was the Chief Executive of that team. Chief Executive Officer is an officer. And now is he now the president? It would say so, because that's what he's introducing himself, a doctor and president, former chief executive. He sounds like I'll have to wait till he comes up. I'll probably recognise him straight away. Please note, timings are provisional and subject to change, because the judge might need to go for wee-wee. Oh, yeah, go for wee-wee. Actually, let's bring up the live thing. Because we paused, you see, we dropped behind a little. They'll probably be back in a minute. So we'll have a little production meeting, shall we? Hello. We'll have a little production meeting. There we go again. Have a little production meeting amongst ourselves, I think. Can have a little chinwag about what you think about, the thingamy-bob and the fucking, the big fuck up that was, the previous fucking 3 years. Which I discussed with quite a few people. It's going to end in war, isn't it? That's what I said. That's my opinion. Yeah. Ukraine stepped in a fucking few years ago. It was fucking going years before that, but that's where we could see it building up. Yeah. Yeah. And then this fucking other swimming pool fucking thing down on the shallow end, isn't it? And down the shallow end, you're fucking all having a scrap, aren't you? It's right fucking disgusting mess this morning. I sort of had a bit of a prediction about that as well, didn't I? I said about fucking it would start on the full moon and then they're fucking gonna kick off on fucking Halloween. Yeah. Next one's 5th of November, you see. Yeah, you reckon a Pied Piper and shit will start fucking running through the town, gathering up all the people. Come on, it's this way. You fucked up enough. Yeah? The great fucking 5-day war or something, can it? Great. Fucking almost a month, isn't it? It'll be almost a month. That'll bring it back in people's heads as well, won't it? Month memory. But yeah, fucking Covid-19, it fucked me right up. Totally fucked my life up completely. Yeah? Turned everybody I knew into fucking irrational pillocks. It did. My boss, yeah? Yeah. The fucking people in the company I was working for. The people fucking working with the company I was working for. My fucking then partner. Yeah? All the people in the church who fucking, oh yeah, we'll take you in. Yeah, bollocks, yeah. Fucking lying bastards. Yeah? Fucking hollow. Fucking liar. It was fucking hollow. No fucking balls. Fucking look at me like I'm some kind of fucking lunatic because I fucking seen shit you like ain't fucking had time to because you're too busy fucking talking about a dog. Yeah? Oh, look at the dog. Oh, look at the dog. Like, yeah, mate, it's a meteorite coming. Oh, yeah, look at the dog. Yeah, it's that type of fucking attitude. The fucking adverts on the telly for fucking pets now. Oh, dog, that's you thick cunt, fucking fat. More pets you got, the thicker you are. It fucking makes me laugh. does make me fucking laugh. It's sad as fuck. What the fuck are we doing to ourselves? Turning ourselves into a bunch of fucking pillocks. Come on, where's this? Is there like a queue for the ladies again? Eh? There's fucking half the fucking men are stood there waiting to go in there as well. Yeah. Fucking hell, come on. Why do they take so long, eh? What are they doing? This is why nothing gets done. They started at 10 o'clock. Rest of the fucking country started at fucking 8, if not 7. Yeah? People on split fucking things, they started at 6. They're gonna finish at fucking 2. These fuckers finish about 3:30 and they didn't start till 10. And then in the middle, look, they go wandering off. Oh, don't really fancy it. Oh, my leg's aching a bit. Oh, my bum's gone numb. This chair's not very good. Blah, blah, blah. Don't they? And off they fucking toddle. Yeah? How long they've been now? They've been like fucking quarter of an hour. What, they've been quarter of an hour? I don't know. How long I've been talking to you guys, eh? Don't know. Screwed my life up anyway. Yeah? Fucked up the heads of everybody around me. Yeah? Just with irrational behaviour. The fucking absolute just rubbish, yeah? People fucking like sterilising bags of fucking frozen peas and fucking the bag handles that things come in and fucking meat and stuff. You're like, what the fuck are you doing? Huh? People say you can't even fucking go for a walk in the fucking middle of the countryside and oh, you can't fucking ride a bike and shit like that. You can't go to the park. What a fucking load of wank did we allow ourselves to fucking be blagged by? Because all the time it was going on, I'm going, fuck this bollocks. Yeah, like fucking, what? What's this fucking twazzock coming out with next on the fucking telly? When the Three Amigos came out, wasn't it? Oh, well, they've got their fucking oak plinth. They must fucking have something important to say. Yeah? Boris starts rolling his fucking sleeves up, wasn't it? Fucking joke. It's a joke to me. The whole thing was a fucking joke to me. I don't care if fucking... are we going back on? Oh no, that's me fiddling about. Yeah. I'm just flicking through some crap on here. And it is crap, I don't even know what it was. I just flicking through looking at pictures. Dudes think they can prove Atlantis by measuring a vase. Right, it's literally like I was looking for a picture for a background, right? But it's funny what it come up, yeah? It's just a little thought thing, yeah? How we do stuff. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah? A, archaeological data. B, hypothesis. Right? Where you either accept or you reject the hypothesis. That's the one at the top centre, yeah? 12 o'clock position. Archaeological data's over here outside the thing, yeah? So you take your data, you hypothesize about it, and you've got questions that are raised or that you reject the hypothesis, yeah? So you either reject it, right, or you've got questions, yeah? So C, questions to test, yeah? And then this one, yeah, perform the test, yeah, perform. Then you get experimental data, yeah? That's E, yeah, experimental data. Yeah, and then you can compare the experimental data with your archaeological data, right? So that's one thing you can do. You can also go back round to the conclusion, yeah? Is your conclusion what you hypothesized, yeah? You either reject it or questions are raised and you go round again, yeah? Interesting, simple, yeah? Repeats, able to repeat itself until you come up with what you require, right? Questions raised. First thing there, you either accept it or reject it. If you accept it, there's questions why you've accepted it. This is real basic shit, right? Real basic shit. But it's worth pointing out, discussing, and it came up just on a whim. So looks like we're back in the house. Look, I'm gonna shunt my little ugly mug out of the way over here. Where should I put myself? I'll put myself top left again because we were all right floating around there. Although I might go. Should we go? Should we go? Let's go. Let's go top right. Right. Reason for that is I think when they go back to her, the lady, I'll be in the right spot so I'm not in her face. Yeah, there we are. Back in the room. I'll just bring us back there, and I'll bring us up to live.
And I think it.
Thanks for joining me, everybody. I'm Dodgy Git. This is Dodgy Git Show 78. We're back live at the Covid-19 inquiry here in the UK. This is Helen McNamara, the deputy of something or other. Health deputy health secretary, something like that.
You can open in the Cabinet Office that has a kind of this is what you should do in these circumstances. But I wouldn't want to be.
I'm just going to pop off, okay? I'm just going to pop off for a sec. I'll be back with you, but I'll leave this here so you can have a little see and look. Read the words if you're foreignish and you want to learn English, yeah?
Personally, it was very challenging. The Cabinet Secretary also had COVID at this point in time, and we felt very vulnerable, if I'm honest.
And we can get a sense of the thought processes in the work you were doing. If we look at a document, which is tab 13 in the bundle, it's 286029. And this is a document, Ms McNamara, you drafted, didn't you?
Yes.
And I think we underline the word draft, don't we?
Yes. I mean, this is one of the experiences of coming for these inquiries is that you see your very, very first. This is the first draft of my thinking on that Sunday, I think, on the Sunday.
But we take it as we find it, Ms McNamara, but it's certainly a valuable insight into the types of issues that you felt you needed to consider at the time. And we can see you've put, well, the title, How We Manage While the is Ill. And
don't forget to like and subscribe at the Dodgy Git Show.
He's unable to communicate his wishes. And then we see, do we not, a series of, if you like, categories of decision-making, which perhaps reflected Cabinet Office directorates or areas of work, and a sort of first thought as to how you might manage who would take these decisions, whether they needed to be taken, whether they could be deferred. It's a battle plan, really, is it not?
It's the very first draft of it, and I think you have not that I could promise the later draft is much more polished, but you have got a more final version which lines up some of this, yes.
We see that then, if we go on to the second page, there's a series, in true good civil service style, of lines to take, questions and answers, the types of issues that you're obviously anticipating people, perhaps not necessarily the press, but people with whom you're dealing will want to know the answer. And we get a sense, perhaps, of that vulnerability you were just describing.
Hear me now.
Anxious, and also the sense of making it up as you go along. If we look at the third page, the question, what if the PM gets worse? So perhaps scenario C, and your fairly frank reflection, God knows what we say here, but final sentence, you don't think there's a world in which that level of uncertainty will stretch out in a way that is constitutionally, I think you meant sustainable, in other words.
Yeah.
If he does worsen, we'll have to make a plan. Is
Yes.
that really what you're saying?
Yes, and this is a conversational style because it's a document I think that I had written for then various teams to start fleshing out and writing the real kind of much more detailed.
So is it a case of Joe Biden goes around the world with like 2 aeroplanes full of people and his own blood, right? And Boris Johnson hasn't even planned, or let's not say Boris Johnson, let's say the government machine hasn't even figured out that it might need a hanky, yeah, or maybe a rolled bog roll, hey, hey, to wipe your nose, hey, yeah. What are you doing in the toilet anyway? Yeah.
Pandemic that we know in fact took place. Even in that situation, it would be entirely foreseeable, would it not, that people at the top of government, including the Prime Minister, would be affected by the illness. Don't you think, with that in mind, that this is the sort of thinking that should have been done in advance, not necessarily by you, but by the system?
So I do think there should have been more thinking in advance, and I hope that there is now. I'd be amazed and horrified if there isn't, about when you are in this particular kind of crisis where the key people can get ill, or their families get ill, or they suffer a bereavement, that there is a better set of plans and provisions, yes, for the Prime Minister, but also other ministers. And although you're absolutely right, there isn't a kind of open the box and here is the plan. On a Prime Minister being ill, fortunately, Mark Sedwill and I had in fact done some work and thinking about this in the summer of 2018, it must have been, just after we'd both taken up our role. And I should also point out there are obviously people whose job it is to think about these things in the Cabinet Office. So I was surrounded by people with deep constitutional expertise. But the nature of our constitution is that not everything is, well, very little is written down. Yeah. And in practice, what it relies on is sensible people making sensible decisions. I don't think anybody had foreseen the difficulties of trying to do this particular bit of thinking while actually the impact of the Prime Minister being so ill, or God forbid the worst happened, would also be even more significant a thing for the country, and the combined potential for that sort of instability was genuinely awful.
Of course, no doubt you're right to say that there are people in the Cabinet Office who are steeped in these sorts of issues, but I think you're also agreeing that it's very sensible to have some plans prepared.
Yes, and it will not surprise you to know that after this we made sure that there were plans, and I was pleased to see in the Cabinet Secretary's statement that there are in fact now there's more robust arrangements in place.
What happened to 007 then? Eh? What happened to this all, oh yeah, we'll protect this and that and we can stop this and that and oh this is against us and what's going on? Yeah? Oh, what's Boris gonna do if he's poorly? Oh, I don't know. I didn't know he had any holiday left. Shit like that. It's fucking, what kind of level have we taught these people to think at, yeah? Yeah? Who the fuck is running the fucking nuclear silos and fucking military bases? Yeah? Because, yeah, do look a bit worn out and a bit like, oh, I think I might go and write a poem sort of fucking attitude about the whole fucking thing, isn't it, really? Oh, well, I've got trumpet practice later. Fucking bollocks, isn't it? Eh? This lady, she's very articulate with her language. She's spitting out some quite well phrased fucking words. I like the tone of her voice. I think she's being honest, and I think she's being fair with what she's been presented with. Yeah, he just mentioned procedures and safeguards. There aren't any procedures. Yeah? They haven't written any. They haven't got a book of fucking Downing Street. How to run number 10. Yeah? All they've got is how to run it into the ground. Yeah? Literally, like everyone that goes in there, it's like, not sure. What should we do? I don't know. Well, Well, we'll order some fucking breakfast first. Where do we get that from? Oh, well, we usually get it from there, but oh no, we don't do that there, so we'll have to go there now. Okay, and they start from there, don't they? Yeah? Fucking contracting everything out, including making their own breakfast.
Quite sophisticated plans that could be made as soon as you know the virus is coming. Let's think about separating people. Let's think about taking extra precautions. All those clever things that you could put in place to try and minimise the risk that a number of people in a particular part of government will all be off at the same time.
Yeah.
But you refer in your statement to something far more basic. If we can look at page 95 of your statement, please. It's paragraph 194.
So they can't even organise who's having holiday when. It's worse. Just check it out. It is quite humorous.
So 4 or 5 lines down in that, well, let's start perhaps at the beginning. You say, as an organisation, the Cabinet Office excels in creating the kind of faceless bureaucracy that is maddening, even to those who are theoretically in positions of power. From the outset, there was a failure to recognise that there was a duty of care for the people who worked in Number 10, or the Secretariat, or the Task Force. And then this, even the basics were neglected. As a small but demonstrative example, it took 7 months after the beginning of the pandemic to get a hand sanitizer station by the link door between Number 10 and the Cabinet Office, a door with a pin pad that anyone who worked for the Prime Minister was constantly having to touch on their way through.
See that? There you go.
Went back into the record and saw how.
That's like a school cricket. That's like a headmaster of a school, yeah, coming out with, oh, the gutter's broken.
To stop
Fucking fix it, mate.
becoming infected. But if
Go around the shop and fucking buy one now, not fucking contract it out to be done 6 months later, you twat.
there's no hand sanitizer, it's perhaps hardly surprising that so many of you got COVID at the same time.
There you go, the consequences of fucking inaction, yeah?
Actually, which I think was damaging in all sorts of ways.
And there,
Do you think that sort of planning has now been done, or systems have been changed so that we could have some confidence that if there was, let's say, a flu?
I would say not, because they're still in denial of the fact that it's fucking even got a problem, and that is the problem itself, is it not? That's why I'm sat here doing this.
The better looked after, more importantly.
I want to move on to another topic, but another matter which concerned you as soon as you came back.
Lunch.
And that was, you describe in your statement that as soon as you came back, really, you quickly realised that there were very serious problems with the Cabinet Office team, in part because they told you, members of staff that is, that they were working under great pressure and they were unhappy.
Yes.
And you...
I thought they were all coked up, drunk and fucking each other.
a review, as we'll see, and that was something that you did, I think, in early May of that year, 2020. We'll look at the documents in a minute, but we'll see, I think, that you worked, first of all, on this with Martin Reynolds, the Principal Private Secretary for the Prime Minister. He is, of course, someone we're familiar with. He gave evidence earlier this week. Also an official called John Owen, who we haven't seen so much of. Can you tell us what his job was, please?
So John Owen was the Principal Private Secretary to the Cabinet Secretary. So he was a director working in the Cabinet Office. So
he was some admin.
Mr. Reynolds.
he did the job, yeah, before the Cabinet. So the Cabinet Secretary has their own private office, and John Owen was the director of that during that time.
And perhaps that leads into the next point, which is that we've touched on the fact that Number 10 and the Cabinet.
They were in and out of each other's offices, weren't they? Oh, yeah, I bet they were. Nobody knew whose office was whose.
So I felt it was very important that it was owned by both organisations.
Oh, now they're organisations.
Because of some of the friction, actually, and that also it was much better if it was the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Secretary.
Oh, there's friction between one office and another, is there?
And the reason why
I remember that experience. Very, very eroding to the to the construction of the proactive improvement you're trying to implement. Yeah, it's like they purposely put 2 jars of Marmite under your feet as you fucking step in them, plonk plonk. They're like, there you go, now run, and you're like, why'd you do that, you fucking twat?
to fix things, and this is one of my attempts to try to do something to fix things, and it was
They
partly
keep,
giving space
they keep playing silly buggers
for
with
people
pizza.
to be upset and unhappy, as well as then trying to get them to tell me how to fix it.
And they told you in person, in the sense you describe in your statement, interviewing, I think, 40 or more people over the course of a few days for the purposes of the report.
Yes.
Were those interviews you conducted on your own or with Mr. Owen?
I think Martin and I did most of them together. There may have been a couple of ones in number 10 that he did and a couple of ones similarly in the Cabinet Office, and that was just in the interests of time. But Mr. Reynolds was also really concerned about what he could see about how people were feeling, so it was something we did together.
Now let's look first of all at the report itself, if we may. So that's at tab 22, and thank you, it's on the screen. I'm not going to go in any detail to this document.
Do you think she's been an honest person? I think she's been an honest person. I think she's fair enough with what she's saying about who talked to who and when and all the rest of it. Quite constructive. She obviously wanted to see change.
Your word.
She proactively made change. Yeah.
Following that train of thought, there's some other stuff in the drafts which I want to ask you about. But just looking at this, we see the date, May 2020, and your name and Mr. Reynolds' name. We don't actually, it doesn't say who it's addressed to, but do we take it from your earlier answer that it would have been addressed, what, to the Prime Minister and Cabinet Secretary?
Cabinet Secretary, to both of them.
So they would have both had a copy of this?
Yeah. Well, sorry. They were both given.
Basic letter writing skills. They both of them wrote a letter. I wonder if it's signed, with wet ink. And neither of them noted that it wasn't addressed to anybody. And they're the ones that are actually there. That actually shows to me how swamped they were mentally and physically with workload. Yeah, they were proactively implementing change, positively. But they even were making mistakes. They were failing, weren't they? We discussed failure in previous shows. They failed there. They failed to put Dear Mr. fucking Boris on it. Yeah? And his pal. Yeah, that's all. But there's an error there. So that whole document might be fucking completely void in court because it's not addressed to anybody. Yeah? Fundamental letter writing skills. Yeah? And double checking. Why are 2 people writing the letter? Yeah? One person could write the letter, the other one could undersign it. Yeah? Go from there. But there's nothing in place, even between them. There's nothing in place for error management. Yeah, quality control. Yeah, quality control. That is.
They are.
Due diligence.
Between the versions. And I want to.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, Dodgy Git Show 78. We're in live at the Covid-19 inquiry. The culture isn't getting the best from people.
Document the inquiry have seen before, Ms. McMorrow, but
if you're interested in reading documents, go and read Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, R-110. Yeah.
Number 10, looking a couple of lines down, not sustainable, people are exhausted and stressed, don't feel confident or empowered to take decisions, a universal sense of powerlessness, trying to do too much so nothing is done well, views ignored, bad behaviours from...
Right, this is where it all comes out. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, R-110. Go and read it. Scroll down until your computer's sidebar says like page 25. I think it's document page 47 or something. And you read in there. Let me have a look if I can just bring it up. Because these people, right, they're reporting the exact resultant of what this document is attaining to produce for us. The table of strategies. You want to go down to table of strategies. Yeah. Oh no, there it is. I've got to zoom in. Yeah, page 24 of 29. And there's a thing there, and it says, attack the privacy of the church, social conformity, minimise the tax protest, stabilise. Let's have a look. I can't really actually read it. Yeah, go and read that document, I suggest. Oh, yeah, what is it? That's right. That's right. In that table of doodah, right, I hope you're following me, document R110, yeah? It says in that table, just down the side, I've zoomed in, it says proper timing, and there's some comments. It says minimum resistance to control, yeah? And then it'll have something in the box over there. And it says maximize control, something in the box. And then the last one in the thing before it says end, it says collapse of currency. Oh, here you go. Proper timing. Less data shift and blurring, yeah? Minimize resistance to control. Maximize control. It says maximize control. Ultimate objective, right? Then it says collapse of currency. Destroy the faith of the people in each other. Right, so go and read that. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, R110. Then listen to the rest of this lady in distress about how the distress is within government.
The term superhero bunfight, I think.
Dun dun dun, superhero. What they do? Ban Danger Mouse or something. He drove too fast, and they banned Top Cat because he was a thief, right? And then what is it? Yogi Bear was teaching children to rob, right? So that ain't no good. What else happened? Yeah? Fuck's sake. Yeah? Fucking, what the fuck was Teddy Ruxpin? Anyway, I'm going to leave this playing for a little bit. I want to pop off, have a cup of cha. I'll be back with you in a few minutes. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me live here at the Dodgy Git Show. I'm Dodgy Git. I'll be back in just, what is it? 3 shakes of a lamb's tail. Ooh.
Sort of way of operating undoubtedly made it possible to go from what might be okay in that scenario into something that was really not. Whereas if I think about working for Mrs. May, I don't think there's any world in which we could have got from January to May and had this sort of culture, because it just wasn't there in the DNA of the organisation at that time. So I do think it is related, and unfortunately, really given this, but I probably out of kindness to John Owen didn't include his phrase in the final report because we were trying to also be moderate. But I think it's a good indication of the strength of feeling and how alien some of this practice was, particularly for us as civil servants, that you don't normally behave in these ways, and definitely in the domestic bit of the civil service, this is quite an unusual set of, culture to work in.
There's a passage in your statement where you talk about, no doubt generalising, but talk about 2 different sorts of civil servants, one being sort of high ego, I think are the words you use, people, and on the other hand, invisible people, and that the system working best if there's a balance of those two types. But the conclusion perhaps was that the balance had got out of balance during this period.
It had got, but also I think the parachuted in to save the day thing was a real problem. There were lots of new people. They all rightly felt a sense of mission and purpose and wanted to help, and that's a great thing when things are broken, people who run towards broken things. But it does also, if you get 15 people who all think individually they are going to save the day, that does not a happy organisational culture make.
Yeah. Well, let's move on and talk about another of the issues which you identify, which is the question of junior women being talked over or ignored. And you describe in your statement noticing a marked change on your return in this respect. Perhaps we can just go back to your statement. It's on, and let's look at page 50, paragraph 99. And at the beginning of that paragraph, you say, from when I, so page 50, from when I got back to the office, other women who worked in either number 10 or the Cabinet Office sought me out to say how pleased they were to see a woman at the table again. And you go on to say that you were surprised by that because although the Cabinet Office in number 10 historically hadn't been, as it were, perfect in these terms, the issue between men and women hadn't been a matter of comment before, but it was now. You say...
Yeah, what's going on there then, eh?
Number 10 or the Cabinet Office.
See, that's the thing. Create chaos, right? You bring new flocks in. Yeah, people start going, all right, don't we? Because we all pick the best of what's there, don't we? Eh? Apparently.
Raw over the next couple of weeks. Not only were there numerous examples of women being ignored, excluded, not listened to or talked over, it was also clear that the female perspective was being missed in advice and decision making.
Was the whole theory about everybody getting in a bit of a flap, shall we say, being suppressed because it was known to be just that? Or were they not listening properly?
So it was striking, and I think the 2 points are related but different. And I don't know if it was a consequence of the psychological pressure people were under, or I don't know what it was, but it was really, really obvious that not only were there hardly any women there, that when they were there, they were, they had to turn their screens off, so or on the Zoom meeting, or they were sitting in the back row, or there just weren't any women talking, which was unusual, and that probably, well, I don't know if it's worse than that, but related to that.
Do we talk about rational thinking here? Could discuss how males and females rationally think about things, especially when they're under the influence of, let's say, HRT medication.
Both striking and awful, and then...
Or not, or antidepressants. Who was an alcoholic, who was fucking who, and who was a cokehead?
Women who weren't being listened to, and also women were being looked over.
Yeah, and just last reference on this point, but if we can look at page 52, paragraph 102.
Whilst they're finding that page, I'm going to read you a little paragraph out of document R110, yeah? Silent weapons for quiet wars, under division. The primary strategy, right? I'm going to go down a little bit. It says, disengage their minds, sabotaging their mental activities by providing low-quality program of public education in maths, logic, systems and design, and economics, and by disconnecting technical creativity, engaging their emotions, increasing their self-indulgence and their indulgence in emotional and physical activities by unrelenting emotional affiliations and attacks, mental and emotional rape, that is in brackets, by way of a constant barrage of sex violence, and where in the media, especially the TV and the newspapers, give them what they desire in excess, junk food for thought, and depriving them of what they really need. Right? So go and read that.
Is it right? I'm not going to read through the whole email, but you are drawing attention to some of the very themes that we've just been discussing. Is that right?
Yes, and the reason I sent this email, and I did blind, I'm sure it's possible to find it, who I blind copied it to, was partly me just checking that what I was understanding was right. So that's really why I was doing this, because it was worrying me so much what I'd heard, and I wanted to make sure that I was right, that this was a big problem, not an individual one.
Another part of this document says keep the adult public attention diverted away from real social issues and captivated by matters of no real importance. Schools. Keep the young public ignorant of real mathematics, real economics, real law and real history. Entertainment. Keep the public entertainment below a 6th grade level. Work. Keep the public busy, 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 with no time to think, back on the farm with the other animals. See that?
Point that the treatment was bad, but you felt there were real consequences of that treatment at the time.
Yes, in my hierarchy of concerns, the thing I cared the very most about was whether we were putting our best effort into trying to tackle what the country was faced with. And I felt that this particular set of attitudes and behaviours was getting in the way of that, as well as finding it personally not right.
And if we can look back at the first page of this document, please. I think we will see that other people replied. I mean, well, let me ask you, did you get many responses to this email?
I think everybody replied, yeah.
And what was the tone of the responses?
That they were glad that I'd raised it, and they gave me other good and useful examples and said that they would do what they could to help, broadly speaking.
And thinking of the chronology, this is mid-April, so this would have been one of the steps that led to the review.
Yes, although I don't think I would have seen it like that at the time. I just wanted to fix this particular problem that I could see in front of me.
But on this document, we can see that one of the people who responded was Catherine Hammond, a very senior civil servant in the Cabinet Contingencies Secretariat. And she said, sadly, I 100% agree, this is an issue. And she makes some proposals there.
Yeah.
Just moving on, I wanted to ask you about what, apart from seeking people's views, and we've also mentioned the review that you conducted, what further steps were taken to address this problem? You refer in your statement to the fact that just raising the issue helped, but perhaps didn't change the fundamentals.
See how much time can be spent talking about the fact she wasn't listened to, yeah? But they still haven't produced a system, right? For her, they haven't changed anything yet. They've just discussed it, but we've been discussing it for quite a long time. This goes on till 1 o'clock, so I'm gonna try and stay with it. Thank everybody who's joining me. If you'd like to like and subscribe, much appreciate that. That'd help me a lot. Trying to build the channel best I can. Thanks for joining me. We're at the COVID-19 inquiry, as I'm sure you know, or you wouldn't have clicked on it, would ya? Hey?
Serious that they were worried about the sexism, and yet they were also sometimes the people who had done the talk. That's also sort of a consequence of working under pressure sometimes. But once the issue was highlighted, people were lots of people changed, but didn't change the overall. No.
A perhaps related issue is the availability of counselling for staff, and if we can look, please, at
They should be on Bupa or something, right? Private, right? As part of the deal.
so 308-323. Yes. We've moved forward in the chronology a little bit. We're now in mid-June, but this is an email you sent to someone called Carol Bernard. First of all, we note that you were there, again, drawing on your experience from the Grenfell fire, and no doubt the support you gave to your staff in the aftermath. But we can see what you've said. You talk about people breaking down in tears and trying to obtain some counselling for them. Was that successful?
No.
I worked in a place where I made a girl cry once, and I think she was on one of those sort of things. And all it was that people weren't doing the job at the other end of the freaking system. They were being lazy buggers and making one rather than just keep making them because we're going to need them. Yeah. It all turned out to be, it was very sad. She was really, really distressed. It was like, I didn't mean to. She goes, no, but I feel like I can't do what you're asking me to do because they're not doing that and it's all on me. And it does get to girls. It got to me sometime. Well, yeah, it did get to me, but in a different way. I got angry about the whole thing.
Have psychological support available, and I had been able to provide that in other departments I'd worked in pretty easily at very low cost to the taxpayer in a way that was genuinely helpful for all the people working on those things. And I don't really understand why we couldn't do that then.
Because they're overwhelmed, because there's so few been trained, because nobody's trained any.
Here where you are trying to obtain some counselling, did you leave it at that, or did you press for it?
No, I did a number of times in a number of different ways.
I'm just going to pop off a sec. I'll be back in a tick.
Just moving on a little bit, but sticking with these issues that were thrown up on your return and the review that you undertook. One way of describing what was shown, although I'm not sure these exact words are in your review, would be that there was a toxic culture in Downing Street in the Cabinet Office at the time. And the inquiry has heard evidence, in fact heard evidence yesterday, of the repeated use of extremely crude language in, for example, WhatsApps sent between members of the Downing Street team. Was that, do you think, one aspect, or perhaps a product, of that type of toxic culture that you are reporting on in your review?
It was definitely a toxic culture.
The inquiry saw yesterday some particularly crude WhatsApp exchanges between Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson about you and about your possible departure from the Cabinet Office. Let me ask you, was Dominic Cummings part of that toxic culture, part of the problem?
If you don't, it would be helpful to me to make a couple of comments about those messages. The first is I think it's important to understand what was actually happening at the time. So it is undoubtedly true that the Prime Minister had offered me any number of permanent secretary jobs in order to leave the Cabinet Office during that period of time. And I had repeatedly explained that I wasn't going to participate in another of my colleagues being moved on in order to create a job for me. And so we had been having this exchange for a period of time. The things that Mr. Cummings, having seen those messages, it was, it's horrible to read, but it is both surprising and not surprising to me, and I don't know which is worse, actually. I think that he was frustrated with me at the time. I would absolutely own that. I would also say all I was doing was actually working in the service of the then Prime Minister and defending his interests. I'm sure lots of this is not for you, but the two things in particular that he was cross about, one was the appointment of David Frost as the National Security Advisor, where the proposal was that Mr. Frost, who had left the civil service as a director, and then taken on very significant political roles, that he be then reappointed into the civil service as a permanent secretary and put in charge of national security. And for reasons I don't probably have to go into, I thought that was wrong, so I wouldn't let that happen, and had in fact come up with a proposal that would fulfil what the Prime Minister wanted, which is that Mr. Frost should join the Lords and be a minister, because I felt that was more proper and have accountability. Mr. Cummings in those messages is also frustrated with me and says that I was sacking special advisors, which I never did, would never be my role. The particular thing that he looks to be extremely cross about in the August is because we were involved in an employment tribunal where he had in fact dismissed a special advisor, and I was insisting on him telling the truth to the employment tribunal, and he didn't respond well to that. So, I mean, yes, surprising and not surprising. It wasn't a pleasant place to work.
And I think it follows from what you say that those emails that we saw, in your view, absolutely are, if you like, evidence or a way in which we can gauge the type of toxic culture that you were and others were experiencing at the time.
It is also revealing of exactly the wrong attitude to the civil service, if I may. I was doing my job as a civil servant, and that I'm confident about that, and the way in which it was considered appropriate to describe what should happen to me, yes as a woman, but yes as a civil servant. It's disappointing to me that the Prime Minister didn't pick him up on the use of some of that violent and misogynistic language.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because Mr. Cummings has been asked about the messages that he sent. But of course, is the point you make, which is that we have seen that Mr. Johnson was a participant in not just that WhatsApp group, but plenty of others where this sort of language, that sort of abuse was used.
Dodgy's back in the house.
In the Cabinet Office, what is your reaction to what appears to have been his failure to try and stop that sort of language, that sort of attitude prevailing?
It's just miles away from what is right or proper or decent or what the country deserves.
Let me go on, Ms. McNamara. We were talking about the solutions that were thought of to try and move on and improve the culture in Number 10 and Downing Street. And you explain in your witness statement, I'm not going to go to the paragraph, but you explain that at least part of the solution to those problems was to encourage people working in Number 10 and Downing Street to spend more time together so that they had a chance to develop, as it were, better relationships in that, no doubt, stressful environment. And in fact, you emailed Martin Reynolds to that effect, and at tab 27 of the bundle and 136760, we see this email. In fact, so it's the sort of lower half of the page. We can see, can't we, that this is in fact part of the drafting process of that note that the review document. And if we can look at the passage starting, I've suggested two messages, the paragraph. Picking it up 2 or 3 lines down, you say, we also agreed that we would find ways for the senior team to get together on a social basis, provided it's within the guidance. And then, as it happens, you go on and mention your concern that guidance on safer workplaces isn't being kept to, and we've talked about that already. But is this a suggestion? This suggestion that the senior team get together on a social basis, is that part of this idea of trying to improve the culture in Number 10?
Absolutely. I mean, people had never met each other. So you had a whole load of people, a lot of whom were really brilliantly useful, who'd been brought into Number 10 as experts and specialists on various things, who were working with people they had never met. And I was particularly concerned that lots of these people sort of had no idea of the sort of tripwires in the organisation that they were working in. And I was confident that if we could just get people to talk to each other, that they might in fact be able to work better together. That has been the case everywhere that I have worked, and it was definitely true at this period of time. That was something I was very concerned about. People didn't know each other's names.
See, that's why we have the Dodgy Git show. See, bring people together, nice place, quiet and that, and think and have a chat, eh? Welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're enjoying yourself, listening to the process and as we go through how we deal with these things.
Documents relating to the drafting process of your review. It's actually an email. Yes, we have it on screen, 136754. And towards the bottom of the page, we can see this is a message from John Owen. So you were saying that he was Mark Sedwell's private secretary and the third person who contributed to the review. Mm-hmm. He's pleased with the draft. He says it's cheered him up no end to read, and he's put some comments in red. And if we could move on to page 4 in the document, please, we can see under Number 7, one of his sets of comments. Now, the subject matter of these comments is not really why I've taken you here, but what you are discussing is the question of whether, as part of this review, people should be encouraged to work from home or not. And in fact, this was another issue, another sort of theme of the draft review, which didn't make it into the final version, perhaps because the three of you couldn't quite decide what you, as a combination, thought about it. There were arguments both ways, were there not? But one of the points Mr. Owen was making, and we can see he's disagreeing with the idea that people should be encouraged to come into the office more. He says, I fundamentally disagree with this. When we're telling the country to socially distance, it shows utter contempt to the electorate to openly flout those rules. Now, as I said, there are arguments both ways, and we see in the documents a discussion about whether, in fact, because of the ways of working in Number 10, it was important to be there. But that sentiment, that it was important for those working at the centre to take a lead and to provide an example to the rest of the country, I imagine is one that you agree with.
I agree that we should have been following the rules. Absolutely.
Just thinking about both of those then, the earlier email about trying to encourage more meeting and this point, what is your reflection, Ms McNamara, on the fact that, as is very well known, there were a series of parties that took place in the Cabinet Office and in Downing Street in the weeks and months that followed these emails, including one on the 18th of June that you attended?
So this should never have happened, is the first thing that I would say unambiguously. And I've set out in my statement a lot more of my thinking and explaining why I did what I did at the time. Explaining is not the same as excusing. And I think that it is both incredibly depressing and actually helpful that people understand a little bit more now about what it was like to work in that organisation during this period of time. Because there's a lot about the handling of when those the allegations of parties came up that I profoundly disagree with, and firstly and most importantly, lying about it. I don't understand at all why it wasn't acknowledged that on a number of occasions, I'm sure, that Downing Street and the Cabinet Office sometimes didn't follow the regulations. You will see throughout any number of emails between us all this endless conversation about, is it okay that so many people are in the office? What are we doing to try to limit the number of people in a meeting room? And some of the reasons, I think, why people thought they had to be at work so often, and definitely why I thought I had to be at work so often, is because it was my only mechanism of keeping any sort of control over what was happening. But we collectively got all of that really, really wrong. I would absolutely acknowledge that. The thing that I think has been particularly unfair about what has happened is it's allowed for a portrayal of a lot of people who worked really hard and did amazing work to be presented as something that, in my experience, they weren't. Now, I find it hard to talk about this because I wasn't there. You know, I don't know how old I was at the time, but I definitely wasn't partying in Number 10. I was either at work or at home. And I think that acknowledging what had happened, acknowledging that some of it was a symptom of the situation, being honest about the fact that actually I would find it hard to pick a one day when the regulations were followed properly inside that building. And I know that because, as I've said in my statement, there was one meeting where we absolutely adhered to the guidance to the letter, and that was the cabinet meeting, and everybody moaned about it, moaned and tried to change it repeatedly. So I know how exceptional it was to really, really, really properly follow the guidance. And I think that...
Do you think she was supported by her management?
I think that I really hope that in addition to the investigation that was done into a specific subset of events, where I would also say I think events is one of those, or parties is one of those irregular verbs. So my glass of wine in the office with colleagues at the end of a difficult day is your event in the cabinet room, is their party. And I'm not sure how a junior civil servant working in Number 10 is supposed to be able to know the difference of where those lines are drawn. And I think that I really hope that there was also an additional piece of work done, which is to look at the entirety of what happened in organisational cultures across Whitehall during that period of time, and to try to understand why. And then how can you make sure that doesn't happen again? Because I think those are the civil service questions. Why did this happen? Why did this collective group of people decide to do things that are so clearly in the wrong place? And then how do we make sure that that doesn't happen again? And like I say, I hope that piece of work has happened, because I think it's really important. Because, and this is the last thing I will say about this, but when the police drew the line at what was acceptable or not acceptable as I think it's called a birthday gathering, I'm not sure, in the cabinet room, when they said that was the wrong side of the line, I am certain that there are hundreds of civil servants and potentially ministers who in retrospect think they were the wrong side of that line. And I really hope there's been some mature conversation about that, because that sort of thing, if it's not addressed, is corrosive, actually, in a culture. And I hope that endless lessons are learned about this period of time, but some of them are about cultures and ways of working and supporting people and providing.
Do you have a just culture where you work? Do you work around a just culture? Yeah, you should have a just culture implemented by your management if you work for a company that's got anything about it.
Acknowledging the point you made about what we call those events.
Yeah.
But you were there at one of them, weren't you?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I was in the office and I didn't think at the time, and this is again my own thinking and my own profound regret, and my profound regret is for the damage that's been caused to so many people because of it, as well as just the mortifying experience of seeing what that looks like and how rightly offended everybody is in retrospect. I mean, I've gone into some detail in this in my statement. I absolutely knew and thought it was
Is she sorry? I'm sorry, I won't do it again.
private office to be able to gather together and spend time together, and that was entirely because of the kind of
Hindsight's a very funny thing, isn't it? But she is embracing the want for proactive, continual improvement, right?
and how important their colleagues were to each other. And I just want to say again, I'm saying none of that in excuse of my own misjudgment, and I'm saying none of that in excuse of thinking any of these things were okay.
What things exactly were okay or not? Precisely. Complex situation. She's not being going round everything, isn't she?
I think it's mainly, I feel,
It's vague and fluffy.
who are caught up in it.
Complex.
But she's right about the young civil servants. They're the people that should be, in a just culture, embraced for the knowledge they're gaining, from experience at the coalface.
Really. But you were at the very apex of that institution.
Yeah.
And so to the extent there was an institutional failure, that was, to a degree, your failure.
Yes, I think describing myself as the apex of that institution is probably...
She's owning her mistake, she's admitting failure and she's not embarrassed to say so, that's okay.
Working there then, of course I do. And of course I own all of the other things that I wish now in retrospect I had done more on. You can't possibly go through this experience at the time and the time I've had to think about it afterwards without thinking I wish I'd done a lot of things differently.
So let me move on to, if you like, a constitutional issue, which takes us back to one of the issues we noted at the very start of my questions. You'll recall that in that paragraph of your statement where you were summarising the preparedness or otherwise of the British government state for COVID, you referred to some unhealthy habits which the system had acquired during the year or two before. And one of those that we touched on was this habit of bypassing ministers in decision-making. Take you to it, but you refer to the practice that developed during the Brexit discussions about ministers being put into reading rooms before.
Yeah, see, do you think people already built that culture? There wasn't a just culture in Downing Street. Maybe there was a culture of, you boy, go and sit in the corner. What do you think?
It's not uncommon.
And the girls were told to do worse by the boys that were sat in the corner, right? Bullying culture, right?
Asks for cabinet government and collective agreement. So that's, in general, the point. It is definitely true that through the Brexit time, I do think Whitehall got bent out of shape in terms of cabinet government and
Whitehall. Well, I won't get into my experience with individuals from Whitehall, but there are a few of them there. They're very nice gentlemen. They're very pleasant to deal with. Yeah, they were. Well, no, they weren't all gentlemen. There was a lady I met. She had a green suit on in normal day, I think. Yeah, we had a little discussion at a dinner. Yeah, but Whitehall. Yeah, fucking hell, man. You got your own rules, ain't you? You don't want to listen to the fucking industrial legislation that's already been written to make sure that people stay safe. You make up your own pile of shit and just fucking augment your own reality, don't you? Yeah, you put everybody in fucking danger when you do shit like that. That's why it's such a fucking problem with what you're fucking doing. And you were doing stupid things, yeah? The double standards and hypocrisy, because one hand didn't know what the other hand was doing, even when I was going, hello. But hey, that's you guys, man. You lot don't listen, do you? You want to listen, we can have a chat, yeah? I'm a Dodgy Git, right? Yeah, why don't you come round, check out a show soon? Yeah, instead of sitting there all hunched over that computer like, and yeah, just come and have a chat, man. We can have a coffee, eh? Not on my gaff, yeah, you can fucking pay, we'll fucking you do the restaurant in the hotel.
To leak something ill-formed, and then everyone has to rush about trying to come up with what the real answer ought to be in hours rather than days.
Let me just now focus in on the COVID period and what you say about this in your statement. So if
We'll play screen shuffle. We'll play screen shuffle dodgy. Yeah, they'll adjust their screen, their positioning, and the cameras, and I'll fucking have to move myself all around the screen for 10 minutes.
here, at the time, I was concerned about what I saw as a circumnavigating of cabinet governance, and you were increasingly worried that the cabinet themselves were not being given the full scientific picture or able to properly be part of accountable decision making. And you go on to say that there was an asymmetry, and we will recall that one of your roles was briefing the shadow cabinet. There was an asymmetry in that at one point the shadow cabinet were getting more opportunity to ask questions of the CMO, Chris Whitty, and the CSA, Patrick Vallance, than cabinet ministers who were actually in the government. Is this the summary of that concern that you've just been describing?
Yes.
If we look just at a couple of documents to see, perhaps in practice, what was going on. First of all, if we look at tab 52, and it's a WhatsApp exchange, INQ 236371.
I love this shit. It's so funny, man. Shuffle paper, man. I want to play my card.
Thank you. So this is a. Have you got that? So this is an exchange between. Well, it's a group including Lee Kane and Dominic Cummings.
Well, they play shuffleboard with their papers, yeah. I'll just say welcome to the Dodgy Git Show again, yeah. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Tell your friends, yeah. Share with your friends. Tell them to come along and check out how England sort out its shit, yeah.
And needing to have an update for the PM. And if we go over the page, we see Martin Reynolds saying we've scheduled a ministerial meeting on Heathrow for first thing, so we can't have a meeting tomorrow, but we'll look to fix it later. And then he says, well, perhaps we could cover it at Cabinet or at the end, at the National Security Council. And then if we skip down a couple of entries, later that morning we see Martin Reynolds, who perhaps by that stage has spoken to the Cabinet Secretary, saying Mark S., one assumes that Mark Sedwell, says he would prefer to do it at Cabinet, so let's fix that again. And he makes the point that Cabinet would be better, since it includes a wider cast list, including health and so on. And we see Dominic Cummings' response, no, Cabinet leaks. If there's bad news, it will leak straight out via some fool. That's a very bad idea. So it's a vignette, it's a WhatsApp exchange. But do we see there in practice the problem that you're describing, which is that the opportunity to discuss a serious development, to understand the science, to have input from that wide variety of sources that Cabinet provides, is being vetoed, in this case by Dominic Cummings, on his view, because Cabinet leaks and we can't, it's not a...
Are the questions getting a bit so freaking long and deep she's sort of almost fallen asleep and forgot what the fuck he started talking about in the first place? Because I have.
Done, and it's...
Got 25 minutes till lunch, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Dodgy Git here at the Dodgy Git Show 78 to me at the COVID Inquiry.
308 305.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can join me again, can't you? And you can join me again next time if you click the bell, and you'll be notified when I'm back in the second part of this. I'll try and do today. We start at 2 o'clock. We'll have an hour for lunch. Yeah, so prep what you're going to have for lunch. Yeah, and then we'll come back after. We'll stay here for 25 minutes, and then we'll come back. We'll come back. come back after the lunch as well.
Points you make. Looking second line down, on a fundamental level, I don't see how this can be the recovery strategy without any debate or advice about the policy or choices contained within it, and without it being shared with government ministers. I think in your statement you say that it simply wasn't shared amongst the Cabinet in the course of drafting it. Is that another example of this problem that you're describing?
Yes, and it's worth, and just in case this comes across as a kind of processed nerdling, it's worth explaining why I was so bothered by it. One of the things that I think happened during the pandemic overall was that it became incredibly sort of, and I'm not a car mechanic, so I don't know if it's short-circuited or hot-wired or whatever it was, the ability for somebody to write something and then it to become a published document from the government was just so quick. And
here we are, the Dodgy Kit Show.
There's two problems with that. Firstly, that you don't...
Kumbaya, my lord.
The boring work of going through all of the things that are on the one hand and on the other hand is important because it produces better outcomes when something is actually going to happen in real life. And also, as important, if not more importantly, the accountable people for the decisions of this government are people who've been elected. And I do appreciate it can feel a bit tedious to have to get them to agree, but it's not a get them to agree and tick it through. It's that they are accountable and they should be making the decisions on behalf of all of us who elect them. And that's not it's not a bit of processology. It's a really fundamental point to the way that our country is governed. So it matters.
So that's if you like, a constitutional imperative.
Yes.
You've also mentioned that the process of cabinet government brings just a qualitative difference. It makes for a better decision. And if we can just look, please, at page 54 of your statement, paragraph 107. I think this is the point we're driving at here. Towards the bottom of that paragraph.
You lot have a stay there, see these guys here chatting. I don't know. I haven't thought about what I'm going to say before I said it, but stay here for a minute and chat. I'll be back in a tinkle-winkle, okay?
But picking it up about 8 lines from the bottom, if we can. You see there's a sentence in the middle of that line that says whatever. You say whatever the personal experience of those in the room, and it was a pretty privileged set of people by any standard, there should have been a way of advising on implications for the whole population in the way that more normal civil service work would have allowed for. And then this, the full cabinet were better at bringing this wider perspective. They were a bit more grounded in consequences that were not as obvious and the complexities of the world as it is. The cabinet were not asked their opinion very often, and not on decisions in flight that I can recall. So is that, if you like, the point that about the quality of decision making that is lost if the cabinet are bypassed?
I think so, and it's also a point about the narrowed perspective, which I think is I presume we'll come on.
Yes, and we certainly will come to that. And I think you, at a different part in your statement, is it fair to say that you had a similar reflection about the Covid-O group, being a rather narrow group and suffering from a similar problem?
Yes, and I happen to think that more elected people involved in decision making is better.
Let's move on, if we may, to a different, rather different, but still constitutionally flavoured issue.
Doesn't that breed a position where nobody's responsible, though? You have 100 people voting and 51% of them think this. Does that make it right? Yeah? Sometimes a company is a dictatorship. You can't have a company, and I've come across it myself, you can't have a company running, on a democracy. It doesn't work. Nobody ends up making decisions properly. Everything's a bloody compromise. You can't run a fricking company like that. What do you think you're doing?
comments on the paper, which I'm not going to go to. But if we can go to the next page, please. We see the beginning of the note as it is, and without looking at it, we can remind ourselves that this was in fact a document drafted by you and Simon Case. Is that right? I think before he became Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, this is when Simon has just been appointed as the Permanent Secretary of the COVID Task Force, or what would be then the COVID Task Force.
And in summary, is this fair? That this is a document which is it is part of the process by which the arrangements within Number 10 in the Downing Street were rearranged, and in particular the MIGs were put to one side and replaced by COVID-O and COVID-S.
Yes, and also an attempt to, again, kind of restart government as normal, I think, which is why there's so many other cabinet committees also mentioned.
As I say, the particular focus for present purposes is on the question of how the devolved administrations were to be bound into this new process. Mm-hmm. And we can see it in the summary of the document, in that bold passage at paragraph 1, 2 or 3 lines up from the bottom, that there is a proposal that we use the usual joint ministerial committee mechanisms to manage the DAs. Just note that word manage, and we'll come back to it, because there is, as one would expect, a further paragraph in the body of the document which gives us more detail on this issue, and that's paragraph 6 on the next page. And we can see that you make the point that so far the devolved administrations have been involved, first of all, by attending COBRA, and secondly, by being represented on the MIGs.
Do these guys, do they claim the document and then claim that it wasn't their responsibility of the decisions that were made within it? Yeah?
When needed, instead, COBRA would stop meeting on COVID unless we re-enter a crisis situation.
That's a question, you know what I'm saying?
And then you talk about
do you need
city
more
mayors.
Explanation?
And then, in bold, do you agree to use the JMC to manage conversations with the DAs and only COBRA?
And this is where you start using acronyms and people can't think quick enough.
Mr. Johnson made it clear he hasn't sort of ticked or squiggled yes or anything, but
And people think they're clever because they can chat paragraphs of acronyms, yeah, and know exactly what they're going on about. But the cognitive speed of the person who may or may not be inexperienced or not, absorbing this information as a human being, as the human machine that manages errors badly, yeah, it's not always absorbed correctly, and people just go, yeah. So you need to, when people say, do you know what I mean? Yeah, you need to explain.
Wasn't closely involved at this point in how conversations with the devolved administrations were going. I know that I had conversations with the CDL's team, it's the Chancellor for the Duchy of Lancaster, who about this note and about the proposals within it, and particularly.
So she clarified herself, that's good. And
my understanding at that point was that it was important that there were some sort of formal structures whereby these conversations could carry on if we were closing down COBRA, not closing down.
Hello, Mum.
Having devolved administrations involved in the replacement cabinet committees, because that would be odd, because it's not the way that cabinet committees work. Then it was very important to have a mechanism for those conversations to continue in the normal way of things. So I'm more familiar, to be honest, with the way that the JMC ran in the coalition than at this point of time. I wasn't really involved in anything to do with.
See, even there, JMC and coalition, what exactly is she going on about? What relationships precisely?
Would be for
Between who and why and what?
not only the CDL, it would
And there's the CDL again?
that the
But the CDL, the JMC, the this
Minister and
that.
the First Ministers would also find ways to speak to each other.
See, and then they say they're talking about First Ministers and this deputy, this and that and this. But they're all part of those freaking people who are groups and this and that freaking office over there, right? Ever such a mess.
With COVID arrangements. Secondly, there were regular calls between Michael Gove and the devolved leaders, but that during that period, the leader...
Michael Gove's all right, wasn't he? He's been all right. He's quite an intelligent, clever chap, and he's been all right with us through the years, hasn't he? Just goes through rides the waves, doesn't he?
used to,
probably in fucking Barbados,
rather than as a means of, to use your phrase, using a Four Nations approach to discuss what should happen. They repeatedly called for...
How do you guys out there think government should run? If you had to write the book about how it operates and how it functions and the functionality of each department, yeah, would you create departments, things like that? Yeah, well, if you did, why would you? Yeah, how would you do it? Yeah, it is our country, it is our democracy, it's our legislation and our regulation that we create amongst ourselves, don't we? We write the book. How would you do it? Let me know. Yeah, let me know in the chat or in the comments box below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks very much.
Johnson to the suggestion that there should have been JMCs during the pandemic. He says it is optically wrong in the first place for the UK Prime Minister to hold regular meetings with the other DA First Ministers as though the UK were a kind of mini EU of four nations and we were meeting as a council in a federal structure. That is not, in my view, how devolution is meant to work. Do you see any tension between your proposal in the document that we were looking at, your expectation, and that statement by Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Can you expand on that?
So I don't think I was aware in making that proposal, and I'm saying this hesitantly because I just don't have much memory about why this was.
He's asked her to comment on something that's like up in the air. It was a bit of a... So she's now got to try and be precise about why she disagreed with something.
Thinking about it in a more sophisticated way than that. This is obviously entirely different. I did know that was Mr. Johnson's view towards the governing structures of the United Kingdom, and I also knew that the personal the kind of personal politics between him and the First Minister in Scotland, in the way that it was played back to me, I never saw it firsthand, was such that that had been a thing that people talked about as being difficult in the first phase. So I suspect that this was a way of trying to go back into a more normal pattern. I don't think it would have occurred to me that there wasn't going to be any JMCs after that.
Whatever you call the meetings, were you expecting a substantive process of discussion and consultation to take place across the four nations looking forward?
I was expecting close working is probably the better way of putting it. That would have been my expectation.
You're close working with the other four people, but then they haven't organised what they're doing and they're coming to you asking what the plan is, right?
Of the four nations also
Who knows?
Met regularly, and I would have been expecting those sorts of the kind of close working while respecting the devolution settlements to continue.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. We can take that down. I want to move on to just another short topic, and that is about the Health Secretary, Mr. Hancock.
There's Hancock!
One of those people who you worked with fairly closely during the period of the pandemic.
So I will have seen him in the formal meetings. Yes.
Wasn't it yesterday old Dominic Cumming tries to blame some shit on him? It's quite funny. Anyway, welcome to the Dodgy Git Show. Thanks for joining me. We've got about 10 minutes going up to lunchtime break. A lady will come up in a minute, Her Majesty the Judgery. She's been sat there dying for a wee for half an hour, right? So she'll be going to go to break soon.
I didn't mean to be... I probably was in a meeting with him once a day at various points. Yes, you're absolutely right.
All right. I want to take you to 2 or 3 passages in your witness statement. First of all, page 20, please. And
real paper. Look, real, smell it. Real paper.
You explained that one of the reasons that you were confident that the plans
I watched that film the
for the
other day.
pandemic
Cool.
existed was
Brilliant
simply
film.
because Mr. Hancock, time and time again, in your words, and as you've explained this morning, without any ambiguity, assured the Cabinet that they were there. And would it be fair to say that you were surprised, let down, when you realised that what he had said wasn't actually true?
I was surprised. Yes.
Let me ask you about another passage. Just going forward a few pages to page...
Did it piss you off when you figured out he was telling you fibs? Oh, here comes lunch lady. Look, she's got the... Oh, where's the trolley, love? Oh.
You say that
Was that lady in the whistle posse?
it became obvious that the confidence number 10 had in the machinery in the Cabinet Office was in sharp decline. Excuse me, there were also increasing questions about the performance of DHSC and the Health Secretary, where the issue was a lack of confidence that what he said was happening was actually happening.
Is that right? He's full of shit.
And then this, the usual systems of governance in Whitehall rely on people being truthful. The sense of this part of your statement...
How can anything be true if you're hiding it through a democratic system of electing something in?
The view that you held.
So it's definitely the view in government. It is, I think it's fair to say it was what we experienced, so that what...
That's like saying the truth is what we say it is, right? Oh, yeah.
Something that was fine, that then subsequently, a matter of days sometimes, or sometimes weeks later, we discovered that that wasn't in fact the case.
Is that when a democracy turns into a dictatorship? Yeah? Strange, isn't it? It's funny thinking about this stuff. It's quite interesting. Thanks for joining me, everybody. We're going to have a break in a minute. They're going to go to lunch, yeah? They've got lunch 1 till 2 UK time, and then we'll come back. I'll do part 2 of this show later if I can, yeah? Thanks for joining me. Click subscribe. We get a ding-a-ling in an hour or so.
Inside Whitehall, in a cabinet committee or cabinet government situation, you don't usually get that. You don't usually get everything's okay, and then 2 weeks later, not only is it not okay, it wasn't even there. That's very, very unusual in my experience. And so this is my point, that not only was that a problem, but why wasn't the Department of Health, why wasn't there anybody who was able to say, actually, it's not quite like that? And my experience is that we didn't get those signals through from the department. We didn't get a sense that actually what we were being told might not be right. And then that also then led to, I would have thought reasonably, a concern that the processes and structures that we'd put in place in order to create any accountability were in fact not really working, because things turned out not to be the case very quickly afterwards.
Yes, there was an issue with processes, structures, the Department for Health. But does it come back to the fact that Mr. Hancock regularly was telling people things that they later discovered weren't true?
Yes.
Oh!
McNamara, and that's page 39 of your statement.
Kaboom! It's a bombshell! Breaking news here at the Dodgy Kid Show.
It relates back to that period, that very tense and difficult period just after you came back to work in April. And in fact, you can see at the beginning of that paragraph, you say it was a fragile time.
Beginning of April. Go back, watch show before this. Yeah, 77. We got Cummins in there talking about dates when he did stuff. We're at April, right?
COVID. But Mr. Hancock had recovered and was back. Excuse me.
Oh, poor Mr. Hancock.
You talked about your respective experiences, and then you say you remember trying to reassure him that he didn't need to be in the office, especially not in number 10, and saying that it must be very hard. As Health Secretary, he could not have imagined the enormity of the decisions he would be involved in when he was appointed. And given, as you say, that it was a long way from the Dane job, you wanted to know if there was any more help or support he needed.
Yes.
And then you've...
Was she patronising him because they didn't have a very good relationship for one reason or another?
Loving the responsibility, and to demonstrate this, took up a batsman's stance outside the cabinet room and said, "They bowl them at me, I knock them away." This is a...
See.
Food in your statement.
This says it all. Was Hancock trying to get in her knickers?
Cox's character.
And she was saying, "Nah, mate, fuck off."
I'm trying to explain just how jarring some of that was and how different places, lots of us who were all in the same, theoretically in the same place that we were. And it does partly go back to my point about kind of nuclear levels of confidence that
Yeah, who was in the toilet, eh?
I think is a
And who was doing what in the toilet, when, with who? And who knew about it?
and
This is explosive.
statement to give you the most honest and best account I can of what it was like to be there, because I think that's the best service that I can do in terms of you being able to come to some conclusions.
See how she's been sat the whole time? She hasn't put her hand on her chin on her hand. She hasn't been animated, has she? She sat there with her hand on her mouse, on the pen, hand on her mouse, and talking to people very, very well and precisely.
It's completely, yes, overconfidence.
Overconfidence, why is that?
Going back to my
I'm untouchable, says Mr. Halfcock.
this failure to appreciate all the time that what we were doing was making decisions that were going to impact on everybody's lives, and that meant lots of real people with real consequences, and I don't think there was ever enough attention paid to that.
You were trying to engage with Mr. Hancock about...
What was it? The tail wags the dog or something, innit?
Scope and
that film
of the decisions he was going to have to be making. The impact on the lives of everyone in the country of those decisions. And he thought he was playing cricket.
Well, I assumed it would be weighing heavy on his shoulders. I mean, he may well tell you that it was, and he felt it was important to project something else instead. I don't know. I just know how I experienced that.
It's explosive, man.
No,
before lunch.
Lunchtime.
Yeah, I have another.
Baroness
It's been a
Heather
long
Heller
morning for you. I think we'll break for lunch now.
Thanks very much,
The
lady.
would also be grateful for a break. 5 to 2, please.
Right, there we go, everybody. There we go. What do you reckon? What do you reckon? What do you reckon? Let me just transition myself over here so you can see me. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Dodgy Git Show. Thanks for staying with me this time. Yeah, the Baroness Heather Hallett there. She's she's just called us all to lunch, so we're going to pop off, have a bit of chow down, innit? Hey, thanks to everybody for joining me. I hope you're finding it entertaining. I hope you're finding it slightly different to just the main old feed there. You know, I'm stop and start, cut here and there, but it's all good fun. It's being creative with the whole internet thing, and as much RAM as my poor little tiny old steamboat computer can handle. But if you'd like to like and subscribe, if you click that would help me out, basically. That would help me out a lot, and I'd much appreciate that. I'd thank you a lot for that. If you subscribe, you get me in about an hour's time. She said 5 to 2, didn't she? So we'll try and come back at 5 to 2, and I'll create a part 2 of this, and we'll spend the afternoon together going through this. We can just see, like I've said before, maybe spend an hour going and watch some of my other videos. But Dodgy Git here, me, myself and I, right? We invented this little space here, quiet thought and contemplation about things going on in the world. I'll cover all kinds of subject matter, from normally motor vehicles come into it at some point, and whatever's current affairs. I found that I do find an interest in current affairs. I like to know what's going on around the world, not necessarily gossip, but actual factual stuff about how the world's being affected by the human error that we are. I find it all very interesting and fascinating. But if you'd like to put your comments about part 1 in the comments box, that's below the actual video once it's stopped and it's just on YouTube. If you're commenting in the chat box, I've got a chat box down here. I've got control of that, but I don't open the tab, to be honest. If you want to put your own comments in there, chat amongst yourselves, get flagged up for anything that ain't quite there. So please keep it clean and family friendly as best you can. As best I'm trying, try and control my language. But language, the way we use language, the way we interact with language, and people's play, the human being, how we're all so different. There was a guy reviewing, he's an American guy, a car guy, I think, and he was reviewing something, and he said, "Oh, I've never been called a Muppet before," and I thought, I look at the world like an entire Muppet show, We're all the crazy nutcases, right? There's nothing wrong with the machines around that we've made. They function fine, and the systems they function as we've made them to, and that's why it always fucks up, because we didn't do it right. So we're the human error. So it's interesting, and I find it fascinating. And I find it fascinating that you out there find me fascinating, communicating to you guys the way I do, in the way that I'm able to via the internet. This new technology we're all embracing. I'm moving from a completely different industry into, I'm playing with this, to be quite honest with you. I'm playing to keep my mind occupied and to keep some sanity, to be quite honest. Like I said in show 77, maybe at the start of this show, I can't remember, I think show 77, COVID's affected me greatly, although not direct. I haven't died from it, but the effects of what has gone on have changed my life wholeheartedly. And I found it difficult for a few years, and I found a few people that made threads, that made vlogs or whatever you call them like this, videos like this. I found them helpful when I joined their live chats and spoke to the people in their live chat rooms. But anyway, we're going to take a pause now. We're going to go have some lunch. Have lunch. Make yourself a nice sandwich. Sandwich. You have a sandwich. What else can you have for lunch? Anything you bloody like. Eat what you like when you like, and enjoy it. Don't overdo it with nothing. That's my sort of saying, I suppose. Everything in moderation, right? Not everything. Yeah, don't want to go around doing murder and stuff. That's not very nice. But everything in moderation, eh? Anyway, click the bell. It'll ding dong when I'm coming back in about an hour or so, yeah? I'd love to see you again. I'd love to have you joining me part of the show and part of the algorithm to get us to where we need to be, yeah? Which is the next target, innit, yeah? Tell me about your next target in the comments, or tell me about it in the next show. I'll see you in about an hour or so, or 50 minutes, yeah? Thanks for joining me, everybody. I'm Dodgy Git. This has been Dodgy Git Show 78. Yeah, what did I say earlier? I ended a short or something with something. What was it? Can't remember. But the other one was share. I'm sharing my love with you, so you can share it around. Yeah, share the love. Yeah. See you in 50 minutes.